Welcome to the show. I'm Randy Ottebridge, and I'm with John F. Hendershot. And today, we're talking about innovation and how your business must innovate or it just might die. We're the two Business Guys Mastermind. Enjoy the show. So yeah, we're in good shape. I like what you said there, though. And John, the people that are listening in, they didn't get a chance to hear that, what you said earlier. Could you repeat that, talking about entrepreneurs and our special breed?
Yes, entrepreneurship is a special breed, and it's one of those things that I think is part of our innate character,
Yeah,
is knowing that, hey, the world reads about great successes in the history books,
yeah.
but they don't look at some of the things that it took to get there, some of the what the world may call failures or
Hmm.
roadblocks, and it's having the grit to to keep getting knocked down where things aren't going your way, but getting back up over and over and over again, because that's what it takes to be a great entrepreneur.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I tell you, as us, as we, as two guys masterminding, two business guys masterminding, and how we really want the things that we discuss and the things that we come up with help other folks. There's nothing better than to let them know that they're not alone, right? Even in these unprecedented times, we
Absolutely.
also realize that there's opportunity there. There's absolute opportunity. And you had talked about a couple of examples. If we can share some of those examples with folks, just so they know that, hey, listen, it looks rough right now, but guess what? Here are some people that succeeded from that.
Absolutely. And I think, and we have spoken about this before, but it's times like the ones that we're in currently, that bring out some of the great genius in humankind,
Hmm.
the creativity, the innovation. And during the Great Depression, during the 1930s, condiments were expensive and people couldn't afford pricey mayonnaise because of the eggs and everything else that was involved in making that. And that's how Miracle Whip, that's how they were birthed out of the Great Depression, with using cheap materials of
Hmm.
oil and water. And we've seen this over and over again. FedEx, they established themselves as a parcel carrier in the 1970s, while OPEC had oil prices out, you know, out the roof. But
Yeah.
what they did was, FedEx did a wonderful job of showing people the importance behind, next day mail, getting your documents signed and delivered, within a day.
Yeah.
And the story goes on and on with number, iPod. I mean,
I love that story. Yeah,
yeah,
when you
yeah,
showed me that story, I thought, and I had read a lot about Steve Jobs and his brilliance, right? But at a time when things are going nowhere, he comes up with this. How brilliant is that, right? What was it that was the dot-com bust of 2000?
yep, yep.
He
And
came out with the iPod, 2001. 600,000 people bought it.
yep.
Now we can do some math. What, $399?
Whew.
Over 2 million people then bought it because they saw, this is what I looked at that. They saw that there was utility there.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, wait a minute, why am I lugging around all of these, CDs, right? I know I used to have CDs, I had nice little cases for them, and it was all these ancillary businesses, but come on now, you couldn't leave them in the car.
Mm-hmm.
They burn up. And so when Jobs came and says, wait a minute, can I condense that down? And if I can show utility, this is the key part. In times like this, someone's saying, hey, wait a minute, he's saving me time. He's saving me all this other stuff I got to buy. And you wait a minute, I can put 1,000 songs in my pocket,
Yep,
right?
and it's not going to skip. If you remember those, portable CD players you carry around with you, and you try to run with them, and they're skipping all the time, and you drop them, and they bust open.
Yeah,
They were
yeah,
awkward. large,
Yeah.
and something that is a fraction of the price. Those CD players are pretty cheap. I mean, in comparison to an iPod's expensive. And you look at, we're in this tough economic time, this .com bust, and you're
Yeah.
unleashing a product that's almost $400. That's a lot of money, and it took off like gangbusters.
Yeah, that is incredible. And of course, the rest is history. So now I was reading a post that you put out, and I thought, wow, this is brilliant. We need to talk about this, right? And right now we have the COVID-19 going on. And depending on when people listen to this, it is a huge crisis. We know that. We know that there are things that are needed. I'm starting to see a little innovation with the mask. I've been calling around for folks saying, hey, listen, I need a creative mask or something I wanted to write on it,
Mm.
right? On the mask. And people were like, well, I don't make masks. And I'm saying, well, make masks, right? Do this and then bedazzle them. People do it for shoes. I said, I want certain thing on my mask. And now just recently, I'm starting to hear people are seamstress are putting stuff together. Hustlers are just getting out there, just grabbing some material, right? One of my little nephews, he's down south. He's grabbing LSU and then creating some stuff. Now I know LSU is probably gonna make a phone call, but still, he's out there getting $5 a pop, coming home, getting some cash, coming home, getting some material, and doing it again. Right? That's getting your grind on. But the one big thing that I loved, and when I heard this, I thought, this guy is brilliant. When you had put the post out about, I had seen the post earlier about James Dyson, right? That one
Absolutely.
that creates he's an engineer, but he just creates these cool things and they're expensive.
Absolutely.
He said
And
that he was coming out with a ventilator. And now this is the part I loved. And he was using some technology that he already had.
mm-hmm.
So now that becomes the question of how do you repurpose what you have?
That's very much. And what I like about, I mean, Dyson's in his 70s, and he's a billionaire 6 times over. So he
Yeah,
doesn't need to do this. This is a time in his life where he could say, hey, I've got enough money. I can keep myself isolated, not worry about anything for the rest of my life. But just to show you the mindset of James Dyson is, when he set up Dyson, he
mm-hmm.
didn't set it up as a vacuum cleaning company. He set it up as a technology company.
Technology company.
And we see this, and Dyson offers, even though most of us, we know Dyson because of the vacuums. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they make a whole bunch of other types of products as well. And I think this is where a lot of very good, well-meaning entrepreneurs get stuck, is they're focused on that vacuum cleaner.
Yeah,
And hey, what if someday, and I'm not saying this way, but what if someday that vacuum cleaner becomes obsolete?
that's
Well,
right.
James Dobson set his company up in a way that it's not dependent just on the vacuum.
That's right.
They're a technology company, so they could build ventilators. And he's stating that he's going to give 15,000 of them away.
That's awesome.
It's just, it's phenomenal. But it just goes you to show the caliber of an individual who thinks far greater than just one product at one specific time. Where
Right.
he, 30 years ago, when he came out with Dyson, the company, it's not like he said, hey, for the next 30 years, that's all we're going to do is make vacuum cleaners. I
Yeah.
mean, they're making humidifiers and blow dryers and all kinds of now ventilators. But that's how we have to be thinking as entrepreneurs. Because right now, if you're in that space that's even similar, my cousin, he's a professor of supply chain management at
Mm-hmm.
Columbus State, and I was having a conversation with him the other day, and he was in contact with a company that makes masks for Disney World,
Mm-hmm.
Disney theme parks.
Mm-hmm.
They are now making masks for frontline first responders. So they're making the COVID-19, and they've already been in that space of making masks. Now they're just retooling what they have and reformatting it so it fits another industry in a time of need. Instead of saying, hey, you know what? All of the theme parks are closed down. We're closed up for business.
Mm-hmm.
they have a bigger vision. They're thinking beyond that. So, and
And
that's
that's good
how
stuff.
it's the great stuff. That's what we need to be doing as entrepreneurs.
And when we talk about the opportunities, again, not calling yourself one thing, but allowing for many things to be under what you're called. Technology company, cars or automobile companies should not be automobile companies, truck companies. They should be transportation companies. So should that transportation change, right? And you gotta drive around in a scooter, you can still make scooters, right?
Absolutely.
And you love that stuff. So if there's a lesson out there for the entrepreneurs that are listening in to, Two Business Guys Mastermind, that's it. Is, don't narrow yourself. Now we understand that, focus for results and all that kind of stuff. We get that. But at least have an open mind, right? Have an open for your brand to let in an opportunity, because you never know. I had predicted when this thing really started kicking off, I had predicted that there's going to be an amazing amount of business models created and an amazing amount of business models shuttered and
Absolutely.
shattered. As you know, I'll give you an example of something that comes to mind is restaurants. If you had no capacity to deliver and you were reliant just upon people coming into your organization or your establishment, your business model now doesn't exist. It makes no sense. So if we think about the conference business, that you're relying on a whole bunch of people to show up in a space. Now we can't have people in a space. Now, of course, we're doing some online summits. That is the pivot to the online summit space. But the vendors that were going to show up, that were going to sell their wares, the food trucks that were going to be around to feed people as they came and gone, all of that now is affected, right? So we're going to see and personally, I've been affected by it. My wife lost her job because, her company decided to do a lot of telehealth, and they didn't need the facility that she managed, because they says, well, wait a minute, if we have all the doctors at home and they're doing telehealth or psychiatrists and psychologists at home, we really don't need this location, right? And it really, harkens back to what the guy that wrote Black Swan, Nassim Taleb, I think, or something like that. He talked about being fragile and then creating why you're fragile and then creating a situation for yourself that makes you anti-fragile, right? Luckily, I read the book and had started preparing and positioned us in a way that everything's paid for, the house is paid for, cars are paid for, things like that, whereby, some things you need to get moved around, but it'll be okay. Now I'm thinking about the entrepreneurs that are out there that were, going invoice to invoice. There's a lesson there. People that were, check to check. There's a lesson there,
It's
and you want to make yourself anti-fragile.
yeah, and it's and everything builds upon everything else. And if you think about it, if you're an entrepreneur or you sell some type of service or product and you're working off your receivables, hey, now you have receivables out that are 30 days late
Yeah,
because the business that purchased that product or service off of you, now they're unable to pay for it because their business was affected as well.
that's right.
And so this is something that is multi-level, and it flows downhill. And that's why it's so important, as an entrepreneur, that you're able to be agile. And that doesn't mean that you don't have a niche. Yes, have a niche, but in times like this, you have to have the wherewithal to look at what you're doing and say, hey, is it relevant in this time? If I'm making birthday cakes and
Mm-hmm.
nobody's having parties because because of social distancing and whatnot, maybe it's time that I'm going to make bread or something else
That's right.
that people do need during that time, that it is going to be valuable. And I think we're seeing a lot of companies, they're retooling and they're making things that they've never made before. And we haven't seen a lot of manufacturing facilities do this since World War II.
That's right.
And it's great to see the agility in those companies.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish that more small businesses understood its relevance, importance, because I think I know you're right. We're going to see a lot of businesses that are going to take it on the chin, and they'll probably never get back up because they don't understand about going through a process of evaluating that. They've been doing something for so long, or this is
Mm-hmm.
all they know, and they don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, I remember in school they used to talk about the forces that can affect your situation, right? Of course, you got competition, and we're so focused oftentimes. And entrepreneurs, if you're listening out there, if you're listening out there, future entrepreneurs, take what we're getting ready to say next, because we're going to be talking about, some specific things that perhaps you can do to now, introduce into your company that flexibility that John was talking about. But I remember, when they talked about the forces that can affect you, political forces, somebody literally can come in and say, you know what, we got a new law. You can't do that. Right. I remember that in the mortgage industry. Remember they were trying to root out a lot of the miscreants during that meltdown, and they
The,
made them people that were making their whole livings from, the that industry. They made them now go and get tests.
mm-hmm.
Some people had to take background checks. Some guys that, that were making a whole bunch of money, but they had some stuff in their background. And because of the new law, they had to, you remember that? I
A
mean,
lot of, yeah, I was in the banking industry as well, and
yeah.
everything down to appraisers as well, and how the instituting the pools, where it used to be a bank would have a relationship with some appraisers in the area that understood the market
Mhm.
within that area, and now they're selecting within a regional pool. And the appraiser might not understand. They may be 60 miles away from you, but they're still considered a part of that regional pool, and now they're
Yeah.
coming and appraising homes. So yeah, there is a lot of shakeup that happened when subprime industry kind of broke loose. It affected a lot of individuals.
Yeah, I tell you, it is. So, guys, as you're listening to this, though, get on Facebook, like us on Facebook. We're going to be. This is our inaugural, right? We are launching this thing, but at the same time, John and I have been talking back and forth. We've been having, coffee times and tea times just to talk about different things. But so we'll put up the links for you for Instagram, for Facebook. Like us. You want this information coming to you. You want to get it in the way that you're going to get it, and we're going to be providing all kind of different things for you to get better at what you're doing. To have, as you listen to us, some things to think about, some things to consider within your business that we say these are actionable, right? And we start thinking about this, right? But I want to ask, you know, how are you using your resources right now? So as you're listening to us, ask yourself, are you pivoting yet? Are you in need of a pivot, but you're scared? What are you doing right now? What do you need to be doing? And if you need us to kind of like walk you through some stuff, we'll have an email address for you. You can send us a question, and then we will, on the show, we will use that question to answer for you. So, come back and listen, but send that question to us. And then what we'll do is our extensive research, we'll use our experience to come on and answer that question just for you. But the question, what are you doing out there, guys, that is requiring you to pivot, but in an area you may not be totally comfortable with, but that you see that there's enough synergy with what you do now that you still can succeed?
I totally agree. And along with that, a lot of times entrepreneurs are so self-driven that they become an island upon themselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And me, I've always seen it as, hey, I know that here is my skill set, this very specific. And so what I try to do is partner as much as I can with other individuals who can complement my strengths. Because I think when you build that type of relationship, when you build that type of energy, that's when you're going to see things, the different perspectives, the different geniuses that you bring together, that's when you're
Mhm.
cultivating some of the best innovative thoughts in any industry.
Yeah, it's that collaboration. I'm going to even go out on a line and say that collaboration may be the new cash flow,
Absolutely.
right? You guys hearing that? Now that's collaboration. This is what John and I are doing right now. We kind of knew each other, you know, we were colleagues in certain areas, but we says, hey, wait a minute. Can we get together, mastermind, and as a result of that mastermind, people can benefit? And you know, we're trying it. We're saying, hey, listen, we believe we can, you know, but then we also know that there is and people don't oftentimes talk about this, but there is a healthy competition, right? That can bring about success from each other, because times when he's feeling like, man, you know, I'm mailing it in, I'm getting ready to lay down, and he sees something from me, and then he goes, wait a minute, that kind of brings about an energy, right? And I think with all of this that's going on, we are now seeing people go, wait a minute, that's a good idea, and then adopting it or reverse engineering it. I'll give you an example of something I saw just this weekend. We saw Swiss Beats, and now this is in the music area, right? So Swiss Beats and Timberland get on and do a battle, right? And they kind of like just beats, just beats. And next thing you know, then you had Scott Storch and Manny Fresh doing one, and they extended it. Theirs was better. Now you got everybody trying to get together. I just heard that Teddy Riley and Babyface. So now you're going to see all of these kind of things. But from that, again, new business models, new ways to reach people. Another example, I saw a lady, she was online, had her Facebook Live going, had her Cash App going. So if you guys are listening to this, think about what we're saying here. Opportunities are presenting themselves because we're isolated, we're quarantined. And boy, I tell you, if you're not motivated right now to like try different things, I don't know. You might not make it. We need to have a conversation. You know, call us up and we'll light the fire underneath you. But again, we have to continually ask, are there areas where you can learn and retool? We got time. Don't tell me you can't do it. Your routine's off. Sure, you're used to getting up at a certain time, drinking your coffee at a certain time, going to bed at a certain time. All of that's off. You're used to maybe not people being around the house. All that's off. But it's been a couple of weeks now. Now is the time to learn some new things and retool. Would you agree with that, John?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I've been telling people for years is even when your world seems so chaotic, you have to be that much more intentional. So if you're not going into work every day because you're part of the stay-at-home order that the various governors throughout our country are given right now,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to be extra intentional. Maybe you're writing everything down. Hey, from 4 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the morning, this is what exactly I'm doing. I'm doing
Absolutely.
my exercises. I'm et cetera, et cetera. And this is how I'm structuring my workday, and be disciplined and
Mm-hmm.
follow that. Nobody else is going to do it for you. And to be honest, nobody really cares if you succeed. So you have to be willing to do this yourself, because nobody is going to do it for you. Every you know, there's only so much bandwidth that all of us have, and Randy has to be accountable to himself first and
That's
foremost,
right.
just as I
That's
have to
right.
be accountable to myself first and foremost. And we have to be that person. We have to hold ourselves accountable, because that means we're being good advocates for ourselves, because we want what's best. And it's not because we're trying to punish ourselves or do things that aren't necessary. It's because we want to become the best version of Randy and John that we want
That's
to
right.
become.
That's right. And if we are able to, again, do things in a collaborative approach, imagine what can happen from that. So as you guys are listening to us, think about who you can partner with, collaborate with, because again, collaboration may be the new cash flow going forward. The idea of bringing two minds together for the benefit, again, of yourself and of society, right? You never know what that other person has been thinking about, and you just happen to have a unique skill set or a superpower to implement, right? Because I know what I love to do, And then, when I talked to you, I was like, well, I immediately went home. I pulled out a PowerPoint. I started creating things because that's what I love to do. It brings about my creativity. Built a website, sending John links and saying, take a look at this, but that becomes that opportunity to, again, collaborate and hopefully, and maybe a little bit later on, cash flow from it, right? So you talked about something in your notes about why businesses fail, right? In fact, we are collaborating on a book, yet untitled. We got kind of a working title, but but why businesses fail and why that matters even more today. Can you talk a little bit about that? I've got the book. Do you have it in front of you?
I don't have the book in front of me, but yes, I can talk a little bit about that. This I and I don't know if most entrepreneurs understand when they set out on this journey of entrepreneurship what the success rate of businesses are, and they're pretty bleak if you look at them. I mean, 2 out of 3 last 2 years, maybe 10% last up to 10 years, and so you look at that, and if you were a gambling person, those are crazy odds.
That's right.
Um,
I
and
happen to be
so
looking at it here.
so in my mind, that means that, hey, don't that shouldn't obstruct you from becoming an entrepreneur. What that should do is motivate you in being prepared with being to be an entrepreneur. It's not, if I'm an Olympic grade athlete, I don't just show up every 4 years and perform. I'm preparing everything from the diet to the exercise routine to having trainers, and it's the same thing with a business. If you look at that, it's not, you don't just show up and hope that you're going to get a sale or hope that you're going to close business, but it's, hey, do I have a business plan that I'm working from? Do I have a model? And am I adapting as the economy and the needs adapt around me? And I think that's important because most business owners, what they do is they kind of just show up like it's the Olympics. Hey, I've got my tool belt on, I strapped it on, I'm ready to go. But what's the plan? What's the plan? What if this happens 6 months from now?
That's right.
And if I'm living on a 14-day scale, and that's a lot of businesses are on that. So, hey, I'm running on about 14 days of cash flow. So if I'm getting a month, so this time frame that we're in right now, this shutdown, a month, it's been going on roughly. So we can only imagine what most small businesses that weren't prepared for this, what's happening to them right now. And now it turns into that cycle of, hey, you know what, if there is assistance, if I do qualify for assistance, this is a temporary Band-Aid because I'm already behind. And now it's, hey, how long is this going to take me to catch back up? Well, and like we talked about, there's a lot of things that you can control, and that's where you're disciplining your planning and in doing those things. But there's a lot of business that you cannot control. And we can't control whether or not the government comes on and says, hey, you know what? I just heard Bill Gates on television today, and he said, hey, I think that our whole economy should shut down for 10 more weeks, because I think that's what, in all 50 states, because I think that's what we'll need is to be able to contain and get the virus in a place where it's manageable, where it's not going to cause a lot of deaths.
I mean, it's nice to have, several $billion to say that.
Yes,
right?
yes.
People are thinking about, how am I going to eat? I know, there's laws out there right now that say, landlords can't, kick you out and all that kind of stuff. But think about that for a minute. I've been in the rental property space. It was always tough when you didn't get that rental check. And I know there's some unique and interesting things that people are doing. And, I just heard of one, quite frankly, that, I thought it was interesting. If you're allowed to do that, if you're offering an incentive. This particular guy, he ended up communicating with his tenant. So for if you guys are listening and you're in this space, take this as a tip. He started talking to his tenants and said, hey, listen, if you will sign another lease, longer lease, saying you won't leave and all these different things and that you'll kind of continue to pay your rent, I will give you months off.
Mm.
So that's just an incentive. So, and I do the math and I go, wait a minute. Anytime someone says, buy now, save this much, I do the math on it and I go, well, from a cash flow standpoint, it makes more sense to buy now, to kind of bulk buy, if you will, right? Versus where I could be doing with the money. Then I go, I'll do that. I'll make that deal. So these are some innovative things that you can do, out there. And John and I are putting together right now. We've got, that actually is one of the slides on the PowerPoint that I put in, that we can't wait for the government stimulus. I don't know if you've seen that one. We've got to be our own stimulus. And then what John and I are going to do is leave some practical steps, right? Some very actionable, some result-oriented steps that you can go. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into that on that actual PowerPoint. But, that just is one of those deals. If you're in business and you haven't planned right, you had a poor foundation. This is some of the things that are in the book that we're writing. And you haven't determined what your value is. You were still kind of sketchy on that. This could be the time to pivot. This could be a time to say, hey, listen, I didn't know what I was doing, but now I do because I've been called or I have a skill set. I'll give you an example. It was a lady that I know is she's a seamstress. No, she makes bow ties, but guess what she's making now? She's making masks.
Yeah.
I knew another entrepreneur, and you probably know her too, that is so busy. She's getting so many requests for masks, and she would just take spare part of things and create custom made items. Well, guess what? She's in the mask making business now at a high level. It is going to transform her business. She's going to get different kind of income in. And then when everything's said and done, maybe, well, of course, what I do, I call her up and says, hey, how about custom masks? She says, dude, I don't have time. I says, well, I'm just saying, imagine if you called up Nike and says, hey, Nike, would you like a swoosh? Here's who I am. I'm a credible person. You can see my business, blah, blah. But if we can make something with a swoosh on it and use maybe your excess material, I says the bigger play, because that's how she gets her stuff now. She gets free material. I says the bigger play is not making the swoosh, it's getting into Nike's leftover material space. Absolutely. And then you see what I mean? So this is, if you guys are listening to this and you're sitting there kind of going, what can my business do? Again, we're going to go into more detail when we put the actual program together, but just start asking yourself, could this work? How could this work? Right. And I know we're good at helping people with helping their business plans direct itself to the opportunity. You may have not thought you had a customer, but guess what? Now you do. Can you adjust and adapt a little bit? Right. And you talk about it in the book coming up, right? Is the attitude. What is your attitude about your capabilities? Absolutely. Are you just going, this is another bad day? Really? Is it? Somebody's having a good day. Mm-hmm. Somebody's out there buying stocks because it's down. Somebody's having a good day.
Absolutely.
What are they doing? Maybe their attitude's that way.
And you look at like a Thomas Edison who created a filament for the light bulb, and how many different types of filament that he tested before he came up with the one that he ended up using. He could have given up any time. He could have been so frustrated. Hey, this isn't worth it. I can't do it. And that's what we see a lot of people that happen in business and why they're not successful. And you know what? You could have been an inch away from the gold and you don't even know it. But you decided at that point in time that, hey, it's not worth it any longer. I'm just gonna pack up and head out. Yeah. And it's you could be right there. This could be, unfortunately, it's these economic types of conditions that may spur the genius within you.
That's it.
To create something that is going to sustain you and your family in generational wealth for the next 70 years. And that's how we have to see things. We have to look at, okay, I understand what we're going through right now is difficult, but what are some things that I can do to contribute to the betterment of society, the betterment of my family and to just my personal well-being, and saying that, hey, I'm here for a purpose.
That's
I
right.
want my life to be worth more than something that I'm just flipping through channels every day and just watching Netflix.
That is huge in saying that. I wrote something down that, I woke up in the middle of the night with an idea, and I says, stop being, this is how it came out. Stop being in business, quit being in business, and start being of service.
Mm, mm.
And if you're of service at a high enough level, the business comes, the rest takes care of itself. The law of reciprocity does work. That is the given mindset. How can I help you today? Right. And then that exchange of value, you can talk a little bit about it. The exchange of value, what value are you providing? Right. And then finding the way to monetize. They call me Mr. Monetize Your Life guy, because I'm always helping people think about things differently. How to monetize this, how to monetize that. They had never thought about, right? Because, well, here's an opportunity that, if matched up in the right way, matched up with the right customer base, or they're encouraged to look at your product and say, wait a minute, it becomes a Steve Jobs moment, right? I didn't know I needed 1,000 songs in my pocket, but I'll take it, and I'll pay you
Absolutely.
$3.99 for it.
And
Right?
I think a lot of people have trouble during these times seeing it like that, because we do have people that do take advantage of economic times. They prey on other
Yeah.
individuals. But hey, if we're providing a service, a product or a service that is beneficial at a fair market price,
Right.
we should not feel any guilt in doing so, because that's how we survive. That's how we sustain our families and our
Mm-hmm.
households. It is a different issue if you're using people or resources, or you're making them pay an exorbitant price.
Right.
There is something ethically wrong with that, but you should not feel anything any you should not feel guilty at all about monetizing a skill, a talent, or product or service or whatever it is you have, because that's how we survive. That's
That's right.
how we each one of us has an innate gift. We're good at something, and
Mm-hmm.
that gift is to contribute to the greater society. And so everyone has to work that gift in the same way, and we do that in concert. And that's how an economy works: is, hey, Randy's good at this, so he earns a living by doing this. John is good at this, he earns a living, and we're all contributing. We're all part of the ecosystem.
Yeah. And if we can come together, right, and put two great minds, or mediocre minds, and then make a great one, that becomes the opportunity too. And I think, this is that time when, I was watching, the guy who tried to sell hand sanitizer, on Amazon for like $70. Come
Mm.
on, and then they shut him down, and then he ended up donating the rest of them, right? I mean, we got to be aware of that kind of stuff, but we also have to be aware, and this kind of helps us segue into our next topic, is we've got to be aware of how all of this is affecting us.
Mm, mm.
Self-care during this particular time, I think, is going to be critical. And you had mentioned it here. Um, and I'm noticing something. It's the most amazing thing that, and I had the, audacity to ask, has Corona saved the world?
Mm, mm.
And somebody says, man, what are you talking about? People are, I understand that, people are dying and stuff like that, but I mean is, look what's happening as a result of having to stay home. We got more family time. I'm seeing more people walking.
Yep.
I'm walking more. I'm getting in my, my health on, right? I'm just watching a transformation in the world. Of course, the carbon emissions have gone like just about zero, right? People are going to be creating, again, different business plans. I'm seeing people get their hustle on online, trying to find all these ways to make money, So I asked that, that audacious question, despite what it's on the other side doing. But when we talk about that self-care piece, man, if we're not taking, you cannot come out of this, 400 pounds and with diabetes. We can't allow that to happen, where you bring in all the food and you just eat it all. You know what I mean? Or you worry yourself with what's on the news to the point that it causes, neuroses. we got to be very careful about it. You had mentioned something about self-care. What about time to meditate?
Mm-hmm.
Can you pick up on some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. We are sponges as human beings. So whatever we feed ourselves, whether that's sustenance, the type of food that we're filling ourselves with, or what we're listening to through via
Mm-hmm.
news or other types of media resources, um, that's what we are going to become. So if we're listening to all this doom and gloom and panic all the time, and it's not to say that you shut it all out and you're not aware, you're oblivious to
Mm-hmm.
what's going,
Mm-hmm.
but it's, hey, how much of it is actually healthy for me to take in? Because there becomes a point where it's detrimental, that it's not just about gaining information to keep yourself safe and to understand the facts,
Mm-hmm.
but it's about, hey, am I creating this very unhealthy environment for
Yeah.
myself and my family? And that's where it could become very overboard. And
Yeah.
so we have to, in these times of chaos, like I was saying earlier, where we might not have a daily schedule because we're working out of our home, that we have to be even more diligent about having a schedule, be
Yeah.
more diligent about being disciplined, having a discipline around, hey, I'm not going to pour so much in news into my mind. I'm going to gather what are the top 2 or 3 things that I need to know today, and that's it. I'm not gonna stress on it. It's just, I'm gathering the information so I can move on and lead my life and my family in an informed manner.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to let it, stress me out where I become obsessive compulsive or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. But we have to exercise. We have to meditate. We have to have quiet time to ourselves. Um, and you're right, in regards to seeing some of that self-care taking place where we haven't seen it in such a long time,
Mm-hmm.
seeing families in the yards playing, and whereas we haven't seen a lot of that in the past 15 years, 20 years,
Yeah.
since
That's true.
the internet and things have taken off. But we're seeing people walking around neighborhoods and doing yard work. I told my wife, I said, wow, if this stay-at-home order keeps up for another couple of months, I said, we're gonna have a great looking lawn.
I know. I
Because
can't tell you. I'm washing everything in the house. As soon as I see something get dirty, it gets washed. I mean, we're cleaning, and my wife is mopping stuff. But I read that. So before we get to that, I wanted to just kind of go down the list, right? So we talk about our emotional, mental, and social well-being. Let's keep that on tap. We talk about time, meditating, listening to music,
Mhm.
right? And then we talk about taking the walks, the runs, the bikes. I've been seeing more people roll out their bikes, buying bikes, right? Education. On my end, I've got about, I don't know, man, it's a ridiculous number. Probably about 200 hours of different courses that I had out there that I hadn't, purchased. I had like some coupon codes and all that kind of stuff. I went and got them all.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
gonna be a wrap when I get all that information in. My head will be smoking and I'll be creating crazy stuff. But it's over 200 hours. I added them up. They'll show you right there, right? 200 hours of different courses on a variety of different subjects. So you guys, you get ready for that. John and I are gonna be rocking some stuff out. But they also talk about monitoring the eating habits. You mentioned that. Monitoring the eating habits, ensure that you're getting nutrients needed to sustain your well-being. Right? We can't forget that we're in the house and there's a degree of activity. Right? Whether
You
we're sitting at a computer or what it is, or just the four walls.
and,
We got
and
to make sure that we get out there and make it happen.
I heard the other day a statistic that alcohol sales are up
Yeah,
significantly over the
I've
past
heard that too.
few weeks, and so you think about that as well. And hey, I'm not saying you have to be dry, that you can't enjoy a glass of wine. I like wine,
Hmm.
but this shouldn't be some numbing mechanism to get you through.
Yeah,
However long this time frame lasts. um, if you're seeing yourself trending in that way, then I think that's a sign that, hey, maybe I should be looking at something else. I should be looking for something else to replace that with, maybe going on the treadmill, maybe taking a run around the block, or whatever it is that you need, distressing, that isn't going to cause harm to you if you continue.
Yeah. And then we also talk about smiling. I was on my
Mm-hmm.
walk today, and I kind of found myself slumped over, right? Because I was getting ready to make it happen. I'm getting ready to walk a couple of miles. And, they talk about your posture. And if you have your shoulders straight back, that brings in a certain energy, a certain amount of confidence, just that motion of stretching back. So if you guys are out there listening to this, or you probably won't be viewing it because you don't want to see us right now. Our hair is, it's just not good. So if you're listening to this, think about posture when you get ready to take your walks, when you're bringing in, I'm walking around and I got my arms, kind of bringing in the air, right? And it's like, that may look weird going down the road, but it is that thing that brings a different posture to your body, and therefore a different energy. So, think about that. And then this last one, I really love this one, man. It's like keeping a routine or schedule. Did you see that it was a retired or a former submarine captain talking about, he says, listen, if you want to keep a routine, let me show you what we used to do on a boat that was like, X amount of meters long and not very wide. He says, cleaning. And he says, communicating. He says, because you're in a small little space, right? And I started thinking how that translates to our homes, right? We're in a small space. Unfortunately, I heard that, child abuse is up. Yeah, I heard that the other day, and it's like, oh my gosh, got all these kids home from school, and the parents aren't used to seeing them. Those rooms are all, but so you got to be obviously aware of what is happening to you in a mental way, what is happening to you from a frustration standpoint, and be able to walk back and communicate and say, I'm sorry. I was telling my wife and I were, kind of, our voices were raising to a level that I'm uncomfortable with. And I says, you know what? There's way more going on in the world than to me argue with you right now. So I'm going to just, tone down. You know what I'm saying? And that changed everything. It's just being able to say something like that. It's like, hey, there's bigger stuff going on than what we're getting ready to, chop it up about or whatever. So that helps. So listen, let's go ahead and wrap it up, John. I tell you, I think there are some practical steps that we were able to give some folks, right? And we're working on, like I say, we've got the PowerPoint that we're working on some very specific things. So we'll be rolling out a program for you guys that you can, do what you want to with it. We think that it's going to help you. We're going to go deeper into some things on how you can specifically, use this time to maybe, instead of letting the corona crush your cash flow, maybe here are some things that we can introduce that go, this will help. This will help.
I think, sorry, Randy.
Go ahead. If you wanted to go ahead and close her up, man.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that use this time and just evaluate yourself, your personal well-being, and evaluate your business. Business may never, ever go back to the way that you remember it. And so you have to be prepared for that. So what does that mean? Are you allowing yourself the opportunity, the agility to transition into something else if need be? Or, and it may be a slight modification of what you're doing. Maybe you were making handbags and now you're making masks.
That's right.
Or I mean, it doesn't have to be something a total 360, but it could be a very small pivot. But just evaluating yourselves and being open to having those honest conversations.
Sure.
And I call them conversations because these are something that should never stop ever as a business owner. I mean, these are conversations you should continuously be asking yourself as market forces changes, as environments changes, as supply demand changes, and what people's needs and wants change as well. So just always be an open and honest about that evaluation process, and continually doing that.
So everybody, we hope that these two business guys Business Guys Mastermind has helped you pull out some parts that, encourage you, inspire you, give you some hope. Because guess what? That journey is continuing. And we hope that you keep moving forward, right? And instead of, like you talked about here, John, instead of concentrate on what ifs or I should have, concentrate on what's next.
Mm-hmm.
How can I be of service? Instead of just being about the business, maybe I can be of service, right? And you had mentioned that being a conductor of one's own set of tracks.
Yep.
That is your life. You guys get that metaphor? You are the conductor of your own set of tracks. The question becomes, how are you going to move forward? How are you going to move forward with all that's going on and still succeed? We don't want you to just survive. We want you to thrive. That's our wish for you. And as we wrap this up, we hope that you go and take these pieces of information, apply them, call us up, send us some information, say, hey, listen, I'm sending some stuff to your email. This is how this stuff helped.